Hi everybody, welcome to today's webinar, Discovering Uniclass. So today's presentation, first of all, we'll hear from Tina Pringle, Director of Technical Information here at MBS, an introduction to Uniclass. Then we'll have a presentation from Ruth, the Taxonomy and Ontology Manager at MBS. She will present the new Uniclass tool. We'll hear from Graeme Tappenden, who's worked as a number of years as a consultant for Environment Agency, who will show how Uniclass is being used in the wider infrastructure sector, not just buildings. And then finally, there'll be a presentation from myself where I'll show how Uniclass is used by MBS in our products. The webinar is going to take probably a little bit less than 60 minutes. Attendance microphones are all muted throughout, but please ask questions, give us feedback throughout, because it's always fantastic to look at that at the end of the webinar. But without further ado, over to Tina. Tina.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Tina Pringle. I'm Director of Technical Information here at MBS, and I'm just going to give you an overview of Uniclass. So really just starting with what Uniclass is. It's a classification system for managing information in the construction industry and also for asset management. It was developed by MBS working with industry and the UK government. The work was originally started around that, but MBS continue to be the custodians of Uniclass. We also continue to manage Uniclass as well with the wider industry and its development for the future. Uniclass is free to use. MBS, as I say, still maintain it, and we update it every 3 months. You can easily download it from the tables from our website, which obviously Ruth will be explaining on the tool today. It's used globally. So while we've developed it in conjunction with the UK government and industry, it is actually used globally. Probably around 100 countries around the world regularly utilize Uniclass, and we have feedback and information from around the globe in developing Uniclass both for construction and for the asset management phase. So how was it developed? Well, Uniclass is structured in accordance with the framework, i.e. with ISO 12006 Part 2. And it was developed to be used both for buildings as well as all for infrastructure. So it covers the whole of the construction industry, from your architectures to your engineers to your designers. So it can be used on not only just your building, but also on your rail, road, water, energy. And it's also not just for the construction phase of a built asset, but also for the whole life cycle of the asset. So the Uniclass classification will cover everything from the initial design right through to the end of life of a building and its demolition and its removal of the asset. So Uniclass itself is broken down into a series of tables. There's currently 11 tables that we actually utilize. And I'll take you through just a series of what those tables cover and how they utilize together. So we start with the really large objects, such as the complexes. Then we go down to entities. We have then cover off spaces and locations, and then activities that are covered in them. So if I give an example of that, if you are thinking of a hospital complex, so that will be the whole of the complex of the hospital with everything encompassed within it. An entity in that might be something like the medical or health areas within that hospital environment. Then if you looked at maybe a space or a location within that hospital, you may look at something like an operating theatre. And then an activity in that would be something like medical scanning or medical procedures that go alongside that. We then have elements and functions, systems and products tables. So these start bringing you down into the more individual detail of the items within those assets. So for example, if I'm still talking about the hospital, your element of function might be something like electrical power. Your system might be a low voltage system. And then your product would go down to the individual light fitting within that. And then we also have 4 tables which cover things like the project management, forms of information, roles, and also tools and equipment. So they cover more things that are across the whole of the project. and look at the management of the project, the information that comes out of the project, the roles that people play and utilize within the project, and also the things such as the tools and equipment or the items that we utilize to actually build, develop and maintain some of those assets. As we say, Uniclass has been constantly developed and maintained, and at the moment we have some proposed tables out there, such as the process and activities table and the properties and characteristics table. These are currently in development and were consulted with wider industry on the development of those as well. And you may see some of that out on our website around feedback on those type of tables. In addition to the tables that you see out there, we also have a CAD table, which is also available on our Uniclass website, which can also be downloaded as well. And as we've mentioned, we also engage wide with industry. So Uniclass is to be used across the whole of the construction industry for the not just the project development, but also the asset management. And we want it to be interoperable as well. So therefore we actually work across both government and industry to get feedback and engagement with them around development of the tables, additional codes and information that they require to utilize within Uniclass. So for example, within the government area, we've worked closely with the Environment Agency, Transport for London, BAYS, Highways England, Ministry of Justice and Department of Education are just a few of those bodies that we've worked with. We've also worked with the Houses of Parliament on one of the projects that they're working on as well to support them in some of their classification requirements. And a case study of that can be seen on our website. Within industry, not only are we working with consultants and contractors such as WSP, Royal Haskinen and Arup and Atkins, but we're also working with some of the BIM4 groups such as BIM for Water and also some of the other platforms out there such as Viewpoint and Autodesk to make sure that and Graphisoft, the information is interoperable and can be used across different platforms. And examples of this are some of the case studies that we've actually been developing in conjunction with our users out there. So you will see some of these on our website. You can get further information on that. So an example of that is the case study for the Department of Education. There's a webinar out there that you can see that gives much more detail on this, but generally to give an overview, it actually really covers the whole of the development of the education assets and the built assets around there, and what this was showing around how the information works interoperable. So the idea is it's not the Uniclass can work alongside things such as IFC and COBE, utilized such as with other platforms such as ArchiCAD and Autodesk and Revit and Bentley. And as you can see where we sit within that space where Uniclass is being utilized. So as you can see where it comes really down to things like the entities on the education projects, we can also, they've classified also their spaces and locations and some of the activities that take place in education, but they've also been able to use Uniclass in the products and the systems area. But as you can see, that's alongside things like data sheets, NRM1 and some of the COBE information in there. So it's really bringing those multiple sets of information together to ensure that they can work alongside each other. Another example of Uniclass in use is with the Environment Agency. Again, you can see a video on that on our website. But this was where the Environment Agency actually used Uniclass to classify all the assets that are managed and maintained within the Environment Agency. So as you can see from our little table here, this is available on the Environment Agency's website. It gives just a brief description and a title for some of their assets. But if you actually click into that, you get a much more detailed set of information and data just around the management and the maintenance of it and some of the details. And this is available for anybody utilizing the assets and managing the assets within the Environment Agency. And as I've given you a brief overview around the Environment Agency and how they're utilizing Uniclass, coming up soon is the presentation from Graeme Tappenden when he will cover out a much more detailed explanation of this project and how Uniclass is being utilized with the Environment Agency. So as we've mentioned, Uniclass is utilized across the whole of the industry and we like to engage and work with industry around that development. So we have the Uniclass Advisory Board, which is there to help facilitate insight and help us develop improvements and get feedback on Uniclass from the wider industry. It helps us give that level of rigor and the governance to managing and maintaining Uniclass, and ensuring that we've got several other pairs of eyes on how that is developing. And we also use the advisory board to help communicate and encourage people in the utilisation of Uniclass across the whole construction industry and at all levels of the project as well. So that's NBS working alongside several bodies. So other members of the organisation for the advisory board are CIOB, CEAT, the Institute of Asset Management, IAM, UK BIM Alliance, and the Association of Cost Engineers as well. So this group of 5 bodies plus NBS help shape some of the development of Uniclass and also disperse that information across the wider industry. Obviously, we've mentioned interoperability, and Uniclass is a key part of the government's industry interoperability group, so the GIG. And that's really about sharing information and ensuring information can be shared between more than one platform and helping giving some guidance and some framework around that. So classification in areas that are currently being addressed by the GIG are areas such as classification, which we've talked about today, IFC, industry foundation classes, information management platform, technologies that are used for interoperability, and procurement as well. All of those obviously all linked together, but classification, and in this case Uniclass, is a key part of that member of the GIG. And it's us as NBS feeding into all of the other working groups, but also getting input from industry and working collaboratively with the other teams around how they feed into Uniclass. And you can get more information around that on the website. So really, that just gives you a quick, brief overview of Uniclass, the structure of it, how it's used out there in industry, and other areas that Uniclass is involved in as part of interoperability. So thank you very much, Stephen. I'll pass you back.
Thank you very much, Tina. Great presentation. And now we go over to Ruth O'Leary, who's going to demonstrate the Uniclass tool.
Thanks, Stephen. My name's Ruth O'Leary, and I'm Taxonomy and Ontology Manager at NBS and part of the team that develops and maintains Uniclass. We've recently launched a new Uniclass tool to enable you to use Uniclass to its best advantage. Today I'd like to give you a quick overview of what this can do. In the home page, I'll just scroll quickly down to it gives you a quick overview of everything that we can do on the website, and I'll go back and discuss all of these in more detail. But you can see that everything's here in one place to get you started, including frequently asked questions and help if you get stuck. At the top here, we have the search box. So we know that the most important thing that people want to do with Uniclass is find codes. So that's made very simple for you right at the start. So just as an example, I'll search for water. And we get our list of results. You can see it's found 481 results across all of the Uniclass tables, but it's also broken down by table. So if you know that the item that you're specifically looking for is in systems, for example, you can just tick the box and it'll narrow it down just to those hits within that particular table. And you can search for multiple tables just by ticking multiple boxes, and it will limit the search to those tables so that you can find the codes that are more appropriate for you. And you can see there that it's reduced the number of hits that it's returning, so that you can be sure that it's eliminating the ones that you don't need. And you can also change the way things are ranked, such as by code, to present the results in the way that's best for you. I'll try another search. I'll search for cat's eyes. and that gives us one result. And as you might notice, what is returned is retro-reflecting road studs, which is not what we actually searched for. That's because cat's eyes is a synonym. It's a commonly used term for retro-reflecting road studs. And the search facility now uses synonyms as part of the search. So even if you're searching for something that might be commonly used within industry, but isn't the term that we've employed within Uniclass itself, then it will help you find what you're looking for. So here we've chosen the term retro-reflecting road studs, but it could also be known as cat's eyes and retro-reflective road studs, which is slightly different. In addition, I've had search for jacuzzi. That's given us whirlpool baths. But this time, we don't have a also known as. So even though this is being used in the searching, we're not showing it. This is deliberate because jacuzzi is a trade name. And we use the generic version of that particular product. But we know that people do like to search by trade names such as Tarmac or Corten, but we don't have the rights to use them within our site, so you won't see them on the site, but we will support you in searching for that and take you to the generic version. This can also be used for common spelling variants such as galvanized with a Z or an S, or aluminium and aluminum. We only have one of those variants as the official UK English version classification term for the code, but we can support searching for that. I'm now going to search for something else. I search for hardwood dowels. With that, we can see, if I scroll a little further down the screen, that we're also displaying relationships between Uniclass and other schemas in use within the industry. In this case, COBE and IFC. So you can see that the equivalent, or the closest equivalent in those schemes to this particular code. There's a potential in future to expand this to other schemas as we get the data and the working with permission from the relevant publishing bodies. If I go back to the home page, if I click browse, that takes us to the home page and the boxes showing all of the CAD tables. And you'll notice that underneath it also shows the version of each table and when it was published. So if I can use these, so if I search, as if I know what I'm looking for, but I can also navigate using the browse buttons just to work my way down the tree one step at a time and see what's available at each stage. So for example, in the products table, I might go to PR40, which is a very long title. Within that we have equipment, and you can see at each stage it's listing everything that's next in the tree. So with equipment, you can see that it was within that category that was at the next level above, and that the next contains means that the next level down we have all of these items. So that navigate all the way down to the lowest point in the hierarchy, which in this case is floats. So there's part of a flotation device and the mirroring document flotation equipment. This also demonstrates why having the ability to do this and to be able to see terms in their context can be very, very helpful. We have noticed in the past there's been a little confusion with another completely different sort of floats, which you use as tools and equipment, as to use plastering, which hasn't got anything to do with mirroring, docking and flotation equipment, but has the same term. So when previously, if you weren't aware of where a term like that existed in the hierarchy, it could be a bit confusing. Whereas now you can see at a glance from the breadcrumb trail, each step on its journey back up. So you can always see where it fits and in more detail, what's above it and what's below it, if there is anything, or what sits alongside it. So you can see at a glance where it sits in the hierarchy. We're also able to download tables, as well as the latest tables. We now have the opportunity to download historic tables as well. So with the most recent update of Uniclass, you can download individual tables and the changes that have been made to that table since the previous update, and a spreadsheet listing the summary of all changes. This is some additional information to explain what it is that we've done. For the older versions, you can download a bundle of all changes and information on those changes, but not the individual tables themselves. So they are all included in that bundle. And this goes all the way back to 2015, when Uniclass was first launched. There are some additional information on the API, which is aimed primarily at developers, but it does give you information of what you can. It does give you information on what you can do with the API. If you're able to understand that. And we also have expanded feedback and support features so that you can keep in touch with us, take part in any consultations, or if you're stuck, get in touch with us so that we can help. And finally, we've done quite a lot of work to ensure that this site is fully accessible. We very much want to accommodate all of our users, including those with impairments of any description. So this site is compatible with screen readers, and considerable work has been done to allow navigation through using the keyboard, not the mouse. So, for example, I'm now using the keyboard to move around the site rather than a mouse, and you can see that the way that items are highlighted to make it clearer exactly where you are on the page. So that's a quick review of the site. I hope you all have the opportunity to go and give it a try for yourselves, and do please let us know in the feedback and support area if there's anything you think we should know about it. Thank you. Stephen, back to you.
Thanks, Ruth. Thank you for the demonstration there. I in particular like to see the synonyms working. I always think it's fantastic to see real life examples of the synonyms. But over now to Graeme Tappenden, who's going to present on Environment Agency's use of Uniclass.
Thank you, Stephen, for that introduction. Today, I'm just going to run through a little bit of the history and what Environment Agency have been doing with Uniclass. So just to put a bit of a background, Environment Agency's main capital spend relates to flood risk and flood and coastal risk management. And just to put it in perspective, there are about 800 active capital projects at any one time through 15 capital framework suppliers, both designers and constructors, and there are about 400 employer project managers. So there are lots of teams and lots of projects, and you can see from the right-hand side, there are lots of assets that potentially need upgrade or replacement to cover the commitment of the Environment Agency to better protect over 300,000 homes every year from flood and coastal risk damage. Now, this has been going on for some years. Following the original BIM mandate in 2011 and up to 2016, the Environment Agency embarked upon a series of projects which got them ready for a more digital approach. First of all, implementing whatever BIM was, and then moving on to a series of digital projects which enabled themselves and, importantly, their delivery partners to more efficiently deliver information using digital methods. And you can see from the screen, it wasn't an overnight thing, and it's still ongoing. And it was important in that journey that we broke it into two halves. We first of all looked at making sure that we were classifying and getting documents that we required in relation to those projects. The Environment Agency typically gets between 5,000 and 8,000 new documents every month, so it's quite a volume business. And we had to know how to classify that. So we looked to NBS and Uniclass to see how we could classify that. And we picked on the project management table, and we classify our information deliverables to that project management table. I'll come on to that a bit more. Later in the journey, we started looking at how we were going to classify our typical assets. And we embarked on a project of actually defining all the asset types. And each one of those types, we again looked to NBS and Uniclass to classify those assets so that we knew we had a unique classification for all of the assets. Which brings us up to today, where we have a series of delivery projects still ongoing, where we're focusing much more on data delivery and how we can make the data more consistent and improve the quality of the data so that our delivery partners can more efficiently deliver the data, and we can assure the data at the point of delivery so that we don't get poor data quality coming through, and we know how to deliver that. And we've just been embarking upon a number of projects which help us do that. And down the right hand side, you can see we're working with various delivery partners, and we've got a policy of open data. So most of their asset information about the assets in England is published through an open data site, and I'll go into that a bit later on. We've got online, we've got our employers stroke exchange information requirements as a minimum technical requirement, which all our suppliers and delivery partners use. And we've also got a standard data requirements library, and I'll cover all of those a little bit later on. We also work with the government and industry interoperability group, which is looking to standardise the approach of how information management is delivered. And we have recently contributed to a case study, which is on the CPNI website, which looks at how we have developed our approach to information delivery, and more important, how we're looking to automate the verification against rules of data delivery, all with the help of Uniclass. One of the key elements of the approach that the Environment Agency has taken is, with you're running 800 projects at any one time, you need to standardise the approach. And we developed a few years ago the concept of an information delivery plan as a scalable platform, and that enables project managers, when they get a new project, to schedule the information deliverables they need against delivery stages, the gateways and the information exchange points throughout the life of a project, and then appoint it to individual delivery partners who can then schedule the information deliverables that they're going to deliver. And each of those is classified to the Uniclass PM table, so that we can make sure that we've got a complete alignment between the delivery documents, models and data and the information delivery plan. And that's used as a commercial product to make sure that we're getting exactly what we want, and everybody can see what's being delivered and when it needs to be delivered. I'll look into that a little bit later on. As part of the process, we also published a lot of the data on data.gov.uk. So we publish the existing asset data, and we also publish the data requirements as well. So you can see on the right hand side, that's accessible existing data. You can find out, and the result of having that data out there meant that the Freedom of Information requests that the Environment Agency get has dramatically dropped because people can see the data and query it for themselves and see their own assets. And for the public, they can see what particular assets are in certain areas. Now, the data requirements library is quite now a piece of work because it classifies over 100 assets. And for each of those assets, they have a number of elements that can be defined. And for each of those assets and each of those elements, we define the data attribution that is required at each of the stages throughout the life of each of the projects. And all of that is classified to Uniclass. Every asset and every element is classified to Uniclass. And the result of that is that we've got an end-to-end join up between the documents that might be the design of a particular asset improvement scheme through to the exchange of the information and data about that scheme to be able to visualize it in a mapping interface, or actually to make sure that the information is approved and accepted by the various parties that need to do, so that you can visualize it as well as see it. And all of that again is classified to Uniclass. So this is looking at an active information delivery plan. And you can see down, this is a particular project, and it's got a list of deliverables down the left-hand side. And for each of those deliverables, there is the opportunity of saying which ones we want. So the project manager might jump in and actually say, I want this one, and he's therefore procured that one from this party. And that party will then come on and schedule the information they want. And then again, that's all classified to Uniclass. So this is, to say, a simple tool which enables everybody to see what's going on, both the delivery partners and nominated delivery partners and the internal environment agency professionals can see what's going on here and know exactly what's being delivered when, and they can even click on each one of those things and get a view of that document, whether it's a 3D model, a drawing, or another document. I'm going to jump from that through into the asset categories. Now that you can see here, each of those information deliverables are classified in the data requirements library, and each of them have a definition and a classification down the right hand side that enables us to understand which ones we want. The data requirements library covers a number of areas. It covers all these different classes of assets. It enables individuals to query individual assets. So I could jump to an embankment here, which is a typical one that everybody jumps to, and it gives you a description of what an embankment is. It gives a description of the required and optional elements of an embankment, and it also gives you the asset data requirements for those attributes. And each one of those elements is classified to Uniclass, and I can jump into a berm, which will be an element of an embankment, and it gives me the data attribution that I require for each of those. I'm now going to jump over to the data services platform, and here you can see the various assets that are available on the data services platform, and I can click on any one of those assets and actually see what it is, and I can see from the right hand side what the assets I've picked, and on the left hand side some of the data. Now all of this data is browsable in this way, but it's all queryable via an API documentation, so that remote machines can query this data and incorporate it directly in suppliers' systems. And that's true for not only the existing asset data, but also the data requirements library. So our suppliers can incorporate these rules within their own systems. And I believe that's the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Graeme. And now back to myself, and I'm now going to present Uniclass and its use within NBS. Okay, so what we're going to do here is no PowerPoint slides. I'm just going to show examples in our specification platform, in our manufacturer product platform. The specification platform in our manufacturer product is covered in this article here, specifying with Uniclass. So if you come to this page, there's a whole article on specification Uniclass off this hyperlink, and Uniclass and manufacturer product information off this hyperlink. But first of all, we'll jump into NBS Chorus. And I've got a bit of a sort of demo project here, just called Uniclass Webinar. So let's jump into the project and look at some specification content. I'm going to start by looking at a specification in CORS format, which actually was Uniclass version 1.4, but just shows like some of the limitations in terms of information modeling, with everything being in sort of standalone sections. So what you can see in this specification, we've got two metal stirred partition systems, potentially exactly the same partition system, but with different codes, one being coded 115 and 125. And the only reason for that is because this has been authored for like a performance specification, whereas this is more a proprietary specification. So let's just have a look at that. Like really the only classification code here is K10. And then this 115 number is an arbitrary number created in the MBS spec system to allow people to specifiers to put their specifications in terms of overall performance. So structural performance, fire performance, acoustic performance, etc. And then if I look at the other specification, K10B, it's still covering metal stirred partition system, but this one here has been authored when you're specifying proprietary products, like a particular type of plasterboard or insulation, etc. So a different code, but essentially for exactly the same thing. And then because this is a sort of like a page of a book, any cross references have got to be done manually. So if you're specifying the insulation in work section P10, that there's no sort of relational management, there's no sort of object hierarchy there. And the contractor receiving this is going to have to be flicking around the different sections or moving up and down the section, following sort of manual hyperlinks, trying to work out what type of partition, so what type of product. And there's other sort of limitations with CORS, that you can have a number of products in one clause, like brickwork covering bricks, mortar, admixture, or you could have products that are exactly the same in different sections, like pipe insulation or sands. So it hasn't got that sort of real logic in terms of classification structure that's been talked about by Ruth, Graeme and Sarah so far today. So what I'm going to jump across here is to show a Uniclass specification that has that logic inside there. So if we go to partition 1 here, you can see the Uniclass classification. And if I jump into this, what you can see is you can specify either by performance, by invoking the performance requirements for things like structure, fire, acoustic, or by specifying the products. And it creates the relationship between the parent system and the performance requirement, or the parent system and the child products. And that gives more flexibility in terms of being a metal stirred partition system. Whether it's a metal frame or a timber frame is a decision that you could make based on fulfilling, say, the performance or the design requirements. And further down the section, what you will see is that everything always has a consistent substructure. So if we have a little scan down here, no matter what's being specified, there's always the subsection there where the system performance clauses will appear. After system performance, there's always a subsection for the products. Just collapse that there. Then a subsection for execution requirements, and then a subsection for system completion. And that's the same whether it's building fabric item or building services. So if I jump across and have a look at a heating system, you're going to see that it's the same logic. You get the system outline, system performance requirements, products, execution, system completion. And you can see the relationship between the parent system and the child products as well. So you can go from a heating system down to a radiant panel. And what you can also do is have two systems that have a relationship with the same product. So this pipe insulation here, if I jump to it, you'll see that this is part of the low temperature hot water heating system, but it's also part of the combined underfloor heating and cooling system. So the consistency and structure and the relationships between systems and products is one of the reasons that we developed the Uniclass structured specification library. really helps things like contractor-led projects where you have more performance specifications that in time become sort of full specifications. Now, if you're working even further upstream than writing a performance specification for a system, we also have content at a whole sort of project or building performance level as well. So if I just jump back across to the project and open this specification, I've used the PM35 section, and this looks at whole project performance. And I just jump to a specific clause I've got here, but that could be things like the overall strategy in terms of structural performance, or fire performance, or acoustics, or durability, ventilation, etc. But if I jump down to this particular clause, it covers the whole project acoustic performance, in this case of office buildings. And as I sort of come into it, read the guidance and jump across to, I think it's British Council of Office sort of guidance here, and you can specify the acoustic requirements either at a space level, so different meeting rooms, different washrooms, working spaces, but also at the sort of elemental level as well. So what's actually separating the spaces, your sort of EF codes in Uniclass, walls, floors, that sort of create those sort of separation between the different space types. So you can go from that early stage specification through to systems and products. By itemizing things as one system or one product per type, it allows us to link to external data sources as well. So going back to this Uniclass specification, just to open the external window system. And what we're able to see is when you get down to the products level, so the window system here, we can link to external information, and in this case, MBS source. So when I come down to the PVCU window unit and come to the manufacturer field, you can see that you've got 100 or so manufacturer products from different manufacturers that have all been classified as PVC window units. And we're going to look at that a bit more in the second part of my presentation. And another external information source is that the drawings and the schedules that are getting developed from the 3D model. So I just jump across to Autodesk Revit here, and I'll go to a sort of marked up wall section. You can see that because everything's itemized now as systems and products, it makes annotations, scheduling, etc., that much more precise. So if I click on this wall lining system here, you can see there's a relationship in the spec to the wall lining system, but also the steel frame and the lining. And similarly here for the floor covering system, a relationship to the internal floor tiling system. And inside that system, the stone tiles and things like the adhesives are things that may be on even models, things like fasteners and associated items. Okay, for the second part of the presentation, now we're going to look at MBS Source, which is our manufacturer product platform. But before we look at Source itself, I just want to jump across back to what Ruth was demonstrating in our Uniclass tool. And I'm going to search for felt roof, just because I want to show off the synonyms again. So I'll search for felt roof and I can find bitumen membrane shingles. And if we just take a second to recap on what Ruth was presenting, there's the item itself, which there'll be a manufacturer products for. You can see its parent category, which is roofing and cladding units. And then you can see all of its siblings, concrete plain tiles, metal tiles, natural slate, etc. So if we jump across now, so we just remember clear plain tiles to Source, Uniclass is the primary structure for finding product information on Source. So as I start to type clear plain tiles, you'll see it's exactly the same naming. So we've hidden away the numbers a bit because we block the user interface a bit. But as I come into clear plain tiles, you'll see exactly the same thing here that you saw on the Uniclass website itself. And that's grouped a number of tiles from different manufacturers such as BMI Group, Dillians, Marley, Peanut Burger, etc. From this level, I can jump up to the parent, and that's now going to show me literally hundreds of roofing and cladding units. So you can go like from the bottom level of Uniclass up to that third level, and then you can see all of the siblings of the clear plain tiles and filter by the Uniclass classifications. So maybe I want to see the concrete plain tiles, and furthermore I could go down and filter by manufacturing name, certification, etc. And I can do exactly the same thing on the building services side. So let's look at search for air curtain. Here's air curtain, which is at the bottom of the classification for products. You can see the entire sort of breadcrumb trailer there at the top. Air curtains is part of the family of heat emitters, and air curtain has a number of siblings, things like fan convectors, mirror heaters, radiators, etc. So if we just demonstrate that inside of source and start searching for radiators, there it is. It's the same terminology as Uniclass 2015. You're coming in and seeing lots of radiator products from manufacturers like Stelrad and Towel, Rads, etc. I can go up a level to heat emitters, and then I can see all of the different siblings, the different sort of options for heating spaces. So that primary structure, a Uniclass on the left-hand side there. If I go to a specific manufacturer, I just want to demonstrate that you can sometimes get whole systems from manufacturers. So a number of products that come together to give the performance you require. And that could be some manufacturer like Knauf that does a partition, or a manufacturer like Bowder that does an entire flat roof. So if I go to Bowder as a manufacturer and go to their, we call it products as a generic word, but you can see there that these are actually the categories for the Uniclass systems. So I could say I'd like to have a look at the different single layer roof systems from the manufacturer Bowder, and you can see them there. And then there's a lot more information beyond the classification. So yes, this is what type of product it is, but what we do at MBS is we try to connect all of the information together, and we try to define the sort of technical characteristics as well. So just to demonstrate what I mean here, if I had to search for a sash window, and what I'm going to do here is say I'd like to have a sash window that has a BSI kite mark, and let's say I want it from the manufacturer to Koenig. As I come to this particular sash window, you can see what we've connected to it is sort of nice imagery. You can click for a large version of that. Sometimes you have multiple images. You can see third-party certification. So if I wanted to, I could come and sort of examine the kite mark from BSI that says this has a particular securities classification, see its expiry date. And then sort of further down, you can also see things like associated literature, digital objects, case studies, etc. as well. I go right back to the top of the page. Here, we always try and encourage manufacturers to give guidance on application, so you don't put the wrong product in the wrong sort of situation. And going a little bit further down here, you can see the primary classification being Uniclass. But for those NBS users that still are using common arrangement of work sections, we do position it at the appropriate places for the common arrangement of work sections as well. And just in terms of well-structured data that we're going to come on with at the moment, we model variants as well. So you've got the same product that maybe comes in different thicknesses, or single, double glazed, triple glazed. You can actually just click this button and compare the variants. So if I wanted to compare the side hung, single, double and triple glazed versions of this window, and just scan down a little bit here, you can see that they all have that same security level. But as you go through from the single to the triple, you get different U values and different energy ratings. Now, how we do the data structures, if we just have a little look in chorus here, is we like define the structure here, and then we get the manufacturers to populate that structure so that you can compare between different manufacturers as well. So if I did search for something like a concrete block, I could come to all of the products that are categorized by aggregate concrete blocks, and then just add these to the sort of comparison feature down here. So I'm comparing a product from Collinwell Masonry with the product from, let's pick, Oscar Acoustics and the manufacturer Lignosite. And even though these are three different manufacturers, and we have variants there as well, you can sort of scan across here and compare things like the thermal conductivity, the appearance, the configuration, the amount of recycled content to the same technical characteristics, which have been defined by MBS, looking at the relevant British standards. And I think the last thing I want to demonstrate is just how source and chorus interact. So if you have found the product that you want to specify, how you can quickly add it to your specification. So one way of doing it, you may have seen this little add the spec button here. You can just click that. So you've done your research, you found the product that you want, you can copy that, it goes to your clipboard, and then you jump across to chorus and sort of paste it in. So I've copied my window to chorus, to the clipboard, sorry, come to the chorus and just click paste. And that's going to take the product from the source platform and drop it straight into MBS chorus, and you get the specification options from that particular manufacturer. There's two other ways of doing that. Save your time and make sure you get the right information going straight in there. And one is to sort of do your research on the right hand side here, find the manufacturer's product, and just click this add spec button here. And that drops straight into the spec as well, and sort of stays sort of synchronized as you make your spec decisions. And the third way, which has just been released in recent weeks, is through the drop-down values themselves. So I could come here to this manufacturer field and start typing. And as you start typing, the manufacturers sort of filter down. It's the same manufacturers out there you can see on the right-hand side here. And once you make that decision, it brings in the manufacturer's contact details and then gives you those options in the product reference. So you can pick the product that you want, and that drops into the specification as well. So that sort of finishes the overview, looking at how Uniclass is used to structure the information in our spec product, and then how Uniclass is used to structure the information in MBS source or manufacturer product platform, and how it makes life easier for the specifier, finding the right product for a project and dropping it straight into the specification. Okay, that wraps things up on this webinar. Next steps, please find out more about Uniclass, have a turn of the Uniclass tool. You just Google MBS Uniclass or go to the mbs.com/Uniclass. And it's always nice to see other stories other than environment agencies. So search MBS case studies, MBS Uniclass case studies, or go to our website to see more customer stories. And as usual, if you've got any questions, if you've got any feedback, all of the ways to get in touch with MBS are down the bottom there. Please stay online now for just a couple of minutes and complete the final questions when you leave the webinar, because again, it's great to see. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, what you like to see in the future in webinars going forward. Bye-bye. Thank you.